So again, thank you, Chris, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here before you. You guys have gotten a lot of really good information so far. We want to keep that ball rolling and help us look at the idea of where technology and business start to overlap. You see, one of the hard things, and it's been brought up a couple of times by some of the different speakers, is that it's not just about who is in IT and who is in business. It really comes down to where do these things cross and how do we take advantage of them within our business community. A lot of you guys, and I spoke to some of you at the break, are coming off of MBAs or about to finish up your MBAs. You're coming with a business perspective. You're here in New York. You're looking for ways to take advantage of that education in the finance community. And a lot of people say, well, where do I take this MBA and how does it fit with IT? Where do they connect? Maybe you don't want to be a technologist. Maybe you don't want to become a server hugger, as Joey so artfully put it. That's okay. There's a lot of roles within technology and within business that need your mindset, your skill set, to help advance the way we use technology within the organization. So, I want you all to take a moment and reflect on yourselves, your experiences in internships, in jobs that you've done, the training you've gotten with your MBA programs, and ask yourselves a couple of questions. First off, at this point we should all recognize that data is pretty much central to everything we do within the business organization. You can't get away from it. You can't avoid it. It is a central part of every single decision that's going to come into play. So knowing that, we need to ask ourselves, where does this information come from? How do we get a hold of that information when we need it? And how do we ensure that that information actually conveys what we need in order to make critical business decisions? You hear the term business intelligence, and sadly, there's often a lack of intelligence in the business intelligence arena. What we find is that it's not just about the data, but how can we ensure that we have what we need, when we need it, in the way that we can understand it. And a lot of your guys' experience with MBAs, with your business and finance backgrounds, that's where the rubber meets the road. The fact is, you're going to take that understanding. You guys are going to be the subject matter experts in the jobs that you're working in. But it's not good enough to just know your work. You have to know your data. And you have to make sure that the data you have is good data. And that's what we want to be talking about as we go forward here. Where do we find our information? Where are we going for first to look for it? Because the fact is, we can't waste time. We can't spend huge amounts of time trying to find the right information. It's got to be right there. Decisions happen quickly. And if we're not ready, opportunities may slide past us. So getting to know me a little bit more, just a little background information. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I got into this business kind of accidentally. It was interesting looking at the slide that Russell put out for us about how 80% of people don't end up in the field that they got their degrees in. I am one of those people. I got my degree from Duke University in public policy studies. I was going to be a politician. I was ready, I was interested, I was an idealist. Of course, as they trained me how laws were made and everything else, when I graduated I was a cynic, but neither here nor there. But from that I realized pretty early on that technology was going to be one of the things that was going to shape business going forward. And so I got involved in entrepreneurship and starting a variety of different companies. I've started actually 5 different companies over the last 15 years. And I started off with a genetics firm, and then I built up a software company. But through it all, I was doing training and consulting as kind of a mainstay. And my own company is Easier Technologies, Inc. And we focus primarily on building data solutions. You know, we come from the background of, or the religion, if you will, that data is the core of every business. And so we help companies build out their data warehouses, understand how to build business intelligence platforms, how to build custom solutions, software solutions, to surface that data for their customers and for themselves. And what we found over the years in doing that is that no matter what business you're in, that data is going to be the key to your success. You have to know, in a pinch, What do your sales numbers look like? What's your profit look like? Your costs, your expenditures. Are things trending up or down within your industry, within your organization? That kind of analysis, though, isn't just about the raw numbers. There's a great line that I love, that I live by here, especially it's a political year. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. So, while I am a huge proponent of data, one of the things you always have to be careful of is what's the context? How does it all fit together? Because if you have something that you want to prove, I can darn near guarantee that there's a way to find data that makes that look like the truth. Doesn't mean it's the real data or the right data, but you can make almost anything look true. So as you're listening to all the politicians, whatever your political bent is, keep that in the back of your mind. Remember that they can make their point look right, and they can show you numbers that will absolutely prove their point. You have to decide if those numbers make sense. And just like you have to do that in your personal lives, for your personal finance, for your political decisions, your business has to do that when it looks at its own internal data. It has to not just see the numbers, but see what's the right information, and when is it the right information, and how do we take advantage of that information to move forward with our decisions. Now, I've worked in a lot of different technologies. I personally keep my hand in the development side as well as running my company, because I find that, again, along with the precepts of lifelong learning, if you are not out there doing it, if you're not learning something new, if you're not trying to figure out the way things are happening in the real world, you're falling behind. You guys are finishing one era of your educational process and you're entering a new one. And that new one is going to be fraught with all sorts of headaches, all sorts of wins and losses as you go. There is not a single person on Wall Street, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty, who has not made mistakes, made bad decisions when they've come to looking at data, figuring out what they want to do with their careers. It's funny when you talk to traders in particular, they will tell you they learned way more from the ones they messed up than from the ones they got right. Because usually the ones they got right were luck anyway. So you come into this environment, you realize you just have to keep learning. You have to keep experiencing within your organization, within your life, the stuff that's going to build that character and help get you prepared to make critical business decisions. So these are just some things that I want you to take away, think about as you go forward. It's a part of that being a passionate lifelong learner that you have to make sure you incorporate into your everyday lives. And last quick story about myself, a little anecdote here. I am a descendant of a computer. Not a robot. All of us look at technology as a physical thing. A server, a laptop, some piece of hardware, our iPhone, that helps us deal with the world. Technology really isn't about the device. It's about the ideas. When you go backwards, back in the day, back before the first computer, real people did this work. If you look back at World War II, we had a lot of technology in World War II. We had bombs, we had all those massive battleships that could fire from the sea and hit things on land, right? Crazy impressive technology. They didn't have any computers. So how did they figure out when they should drop the bomb? How did they figure out how they should angle that actual battery of weapons? They actually had a room full of 100 women that were by hand doing all of the calculation tables with nothing but a souped up calculator that wouldn't have been used in high schools now. It doesn't even rate what your scientific calculators could do. We're talking about barely better than the old style Casio that could do nothing but multiplication, addition, and subtraction. And there were these 100 women spending 18 hours a day doing every calculation that they could come up with to build those tables so that some bomber in a plane could look at a little dial, line up to targets, and hit a button. And so technology really comes from the people and the ideas. So where does the I descend from a computer come from? Well, we all to some degree do, but specifically, if you ever get a chance, you can check it out on Netflix. There's a documentary called Top Secret Rosies. It's about women contribution to science and technology in World War II. And it talks about some of this stuff that I was just relating to you. And two of the people who were among those 100 women was my grandmother and her twin sister, Doris Blumberg and Shirley Blumberg. So if you ever get a chance to check it out, she literally has pay stubs from the government that list her title as computer. So there you go, put the same thing. But I do encourage you to look at this stuff, because the fact is, it doesn't change. It's about the ideas. It's about looking at how to apply math, science, finance into the real world and find some new way to use that information, some new way to capture people's excitement. When people talk about genetics, DNA research, all that stuff stems from this idea of how can we use the information that's out there in new and interesting ways. But that information is there for us to work with. So, and finally here, we talk about lifelong learning. We've seen a lot of these learning is videos. For me, I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that learning is empowerment, self-empowerment. When you want to find that next thing in your career, when you want to get to that next stage, lift yourself up that ladder, it's learning. You're going to teach yourself what you need to know. You're going to find the resources to learn what you need to know. And that empowerment is the engine that can drive your careers forward. All right, so let's talk a little bit about BI and how this fits into our world. Now, what you'll find is that a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about have parallels to what Joey was talking about with the cloud. The fact is, when we start talking about business intelligence and start talking about utilizing that data, we're working with the same kinds of platforms, the same kinds of problems. How do we deal with all this information? You know, when you're working and you're out in the workplace, out in Wall Street, this happens all the time, I can tell you from experience. You deal with, how do we work with all this disparate, heterogeneous data? You've got information overload. You know, they say this is the information age, but really we're drowning in this stuff. And it's very, very difficult for any one person to get their head wrapped around what's possible. So you come into situations where you have different strategies in different departments. Each group came up with a different way to deal with their data. And so now you've got to figure out how to come up with a corporate strategy across all that different information. We deal with situations where each group might have truly chosen the best in class technology for them. That doesn't mean it was best for the next group. What's best for IT isn't necessarily best for your sales or your marketing or your traders if you're in Wall Street. And so now we've got lots of best-in-class technology that doesn't actually solve the overall corporate need. And so these are the kinds of problems that we're faced with. How do we pull all this together? How do we get all this information into usable forms that can co-live, co-relate, and allow us to build a true corporate strategy? Now, there have been a number of studies done by Gartner that show that most medium to large scale businesses actually believe that they have anywhere from 3 to 5 different BI platforms that they're working with within their organization. Think about that for a second. A single company trying to find a single business strategy, but they have to go to 3 to 5 different systems to even find this information. What are the chances that they're going to get good data? What are the chances they're even going to be looking at the same data in each of the systems? Not good. And those are the real problems you're going to face when you step out into the business world. Whether you're working here in Wall Street, you're working with major Fortune 500 companies, working with casinos, they all face the same kinds of problems. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. They all have this disparate data that they have to work with. And it costs a lot of money to manage it. It puts people in a position where their IT costs shoot through the roof. We talk about scaling for the cloud and things like that. Well, part of the problem is we have all this information that we're dealing with, and we don't even have it in one place. So we have to decide what stuff goes to the cloud. Well, first, even before you get there, you have to decide what information you even have. And these are real problems that you'll face when you step out into the business world. Now, when we start talking about consolidation, it's the panacea. It's a great idea, but it does have some real obstacles that we have to overcome. One of the problems is data builds up over time. And so you end up with a scenario where you have a lot of legacy information that you have to deal with, and we need to find solutions that allow us to bring very different sorts of data together into a single platform. And this is one of the places that Microsoft has spent a huge amount of their time and effort in recent years, trying to build platforms that can pull this data together and give you, the users, the people who have that subject matter expertise, the ability to go in and start slicing and dicing that data down, start analyzing it, start doing the jobs that you want to do, but doing it against all of your corporate data so you can get accurate information out of it. So again, part of Microsoft's vision in this is to get you the right information at the right time and in the right format, meaning in a way that you can consume it and in a way that you can work with it and report on it. For a lot of years when we talked about business intelligence, you were really talking about only big companies, because only big companies could afford to buy the huge software packages that were necessary to do data analysis. It just wasn't available to a startup or to a mid-sized company. They didn't have the resources. And one of Microsoft's big pushes is to change that, to provide, as a part of their infrastructure, all the tools you need, and to do it from tools that you're already comfortable with. And that's part of what we want to talk about going forward here. Microsoft has put a lot of emphasis on integration between their own technologies, understanding how to build and collaborate and report using the same tools, the same infrastructure, the same look and feel. When we talk about things like SQL Server as a data storage point, they've built in tremendous tools for reporting right into the SQL Server platform. Heck, the reporting tools come free. If you get the free version of SQL Server, you can still get the reporting tools. This is a major push for them. Going in, giving you the ability to do the reporting, being able to build complex analysis environments, what we call cubes, to be able to slice that data, to twist it and analyze it in a variety of different ways. If you go out into Wall Street firms, you're going to find these things all over the place, because you know what? Data is not simple. It's not really a question of, okay, here's my sales, let's go forward. It's really about looking at the depth of the data. Well, I need to see this data based on where the sales happened, geographically. I need to look at this data based on what products were being bought, what years, what months. I need to twist and turn that data till I understand the trends that are happening. You see this with the traders all the time. They have to consume huge amounts of data in order to understand where their slice of the industry is heading. What's happening? What are the indicators? What's going on with the different indexes? They have to consume all that information, and they have to twist it and turn it until they understand what's happening within the industry. And so SQL Server is providing a lot of technology to support the storage of that, the management of that, the building of those cubes, the building of the reports off of the cubes, and the moving of the data from a variety of different sources into SQL Server. Shameless Microsoft plug, although I don't work for Microsoft, is that part of what they're trying to become is the hub of all of your data. They're not telling you you have to move the data out of whatever system is already in, whatever legacy tools ensconced in. Instead, they're telling you, that's fine, it is what it is, you're going to migrate over time based on what's best for your organization. But what you can do is you can make your data warehouse in SQL Server, and it will consume that data from all of the different sources and give you one version of the truth. One place where the data all comes together, and then you can build your reporting and your analysis off of that. And whether you use Microsoft or anything else, part of your goal should be to look at, is this possible within your organization? And what are the key ways that you can implement it? Because you don't have to be an IT person to know that, but you do have to have the idea of what is the core data? What is important in your organization? And can we bring that information together so we can analyze it properly? These tools are just here to help you achieve some of those goals. Beyond that, we talk about the idea of collaboration. It's one thing to get all the data, mash it all together into a data warehouse. That's all well and good. But if your users, you guys, other subject matter experts, the analysts, whoever it is within your organization, if they can't get at that data, you're sunk already. If they can't interact with it, if they can't see it and visualize it in meaningful ways, they're stuck. And so Microsoft has built out that SharePoint platform to give people the ability to communicate this information, to build reports without being experts in report building, to show data, relate data, and analyze data in one collaborative environment where people are going to be able to share documents, share customer information, whatever kind of data it is, whether it's in their internal systems or in other line of business data. Again, a hub for collaborating on that data. This is their vision. Central storage to manage it, a central platform where you can collaborate and interact with that data going forward. And of course, Office, we all know Office well. I'm sure you've played with it for every level of your education, from writing reports or theses or whatever you had to do for your educational steps. We've worked with Office for a long time. It's become integrated in every aspect of business. You guys are here in New York. If you're going to be working for any of the Wall Street firms, Excel is going to be your best friend or your worst nightmare. But it's going to be a part of your life either way, right? You cannot avoid it. You cannot escape it. Excel is literally lifeblood to most of the analysts out there. They can't get away from it. They have to do everything in it. It was actually kind of funny when Microsoft shifted to the new ribbon interface, made all those changes. I had clients all over Wall Street that were talking about jumping out of windows because they could not function. These are people who had used the tool in one way for 15, 20 years solid. And then now, it changed. Most people don't like change. But again, we need to be on top of that. We need to be ahead of that curve, not stuck by it. Because the people who got on the board fast, learned how to do things better in the new system, guess what? They got the better jobs. They got things done faster than the people around them and got noticed. It can be little things. Even little things like Office can affect career trajectories within the organization. So these are things that I want you to think about as we're going forward. And Microsoft, I can guarantee you, is thinking about these things. Because from their perspective, all these tools tie together. Everything integrates. It's one world, hopefully the Microsoft world. All right. Our goal with all of this is threefold. First off, we need to empower the user. We call this self-service in a lot of situations. The fact is, when you go out there, you may find that if you make a request of IT, you heard this, the first answer is no, right? The second answer is, it's on the 18-month list, meaning it's never actually going to happen, but we're going to give you the satisfaction of saying we put it on our to-do list. Because guess what? It's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't want to do it. The fact is, IT is overwhelmed. Very few organizations have a proportional number of IT to the requests that are being made within the organization. And a lot of them are trying to fix that, and they're trying to hire. But as we saw and heard from the other speakers, they're not finding the skill sets they need. And so the result is that skill gap, where they've got a lot of things they want to do, and they do not have the people to achieve those goals. So what do we do about this? Well, there's a couple different approaches. For some of you, it will mean learning that technology and becoming that bridge where you can do that work for them. For some of you, you'll say, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to be that IT person. That doesn't mean you don't have a role to play. The fact is, a lot of the tools that are coming down the pipe are designed so that you don't have to be a technology specialist to use them. So that you can go out using the Excel tool that you've used for 10 years, and you can start building a dashboard that shows graphically what's going on within the organization, and that pulls that data from a lot of different sources. So that you can then take that, and you can share it with your colleagues through SharePoint. It's a series of tools that work regardless of your technology skill. And so for a lot of you, you'll want to look at and think about ways to become familiar and comfortable with those technologies. Because even if you never become a technology specialist or an IT person, you can still derive huge benefits and huge advantages from being technology savvy and knowing how to take that information that you have so lovingly developed and really share it with everybody in the organization. Compose it in a way that's compelling and appealing and interactive. Those are things that you should be thinking about, regardless of what you feel is about becoming IT or pushing to become part of that industry. There is a role of IT for each and every one of you, no matter what business role you end up taking on. All right. Now, when we start talking about the idea of empowering our end users, Microsoft has taken a number of different approaches to this. They start first and foremost with Excel. The bottom line is most people are comfortable with it, and so they wanted to build a platform that allowed people to use that comfort to build out true solutions to business problems. So within PowerPoint, you really can connect to almost any kind of data source. It's not even hard to do. They've got wizards that walk you through all of it. You can pull that data into Excel, and then you can build charts, pivot tables, pivot charts, filtering, all sorts of interesting data-driven applications without ever writing a line of code, just by working with a tool that's meant to handle data. Now, they started running into problems with the number and types of records that they were trying to throw in Excel. It gets slow. Well, they've found ways to resolve that too. They've got a new add-in called Power Pivot that literally lets Excel handle hundreds of millions of records and still perform. So even if you don't learn any other piece, just becoming comfortable with what Excel already can do natively, and that Power Pivot add-on is a free add-in you can put into Excel at any time. That right there could set you apart, could differentiate you from other people in the workforce. Because you're no longer just someone who can look at the data, you're someone who can generate good data and generate it in a way that's meaningful to your colleagues. Now, as we look at this, we start looking at how do we show data to people so they understand it. You know, it's one thing to bring up an Excel file and you've seen where it's got lots of columns and thousands of rows. It's a little overwhelming, right? It's a lot of data to consume, and you just can't wrap your head around it. You need better ways to visualize this information, to report on it. See, the difference between data and reports is in presentation. It's about taking that information and not just force-feeding it to people where they can't really deal with it anymore, but finding a way for them to be able to touch it, taste it, feel it, use all of their senses to understand the information that's being presented to them. And there's a lot of tools built in to do this. Right in Excel, building complex charts, building filters and dynamic interaction with those charts, drill down behaviors. Again, none of this involves you becoming super tech or even a geek. It involves understanding how technology fits in your business world with your business needs and your business objectives. So we look at these tools and we start thinking about what can we do with this information. And that's part of my goal here today, is to give you ideas on how you can take simple tools, simple environments, but generate rich data that's going to help your organization make decisions. Now, when we start moving this process forward, the first step is generating that information, coming up with those charts, finding the data, connecting to the data, pulling that information together. But the fact is, it's also about sharing that data. Because you know what? And we've probably all seen this, where people start attaching Excel files and PowerPoints into emails and sending them all over the place. If you've ever had a scenario where you pushed this data forward and sent out an email and got replies back and then replied to those with reply alls across the company, this can get ugly really fast. That's exactly right. You get out of hand. It's the only problem with talking with your hands. At least I didn't throw it at anyone. So. They've got tools in there now that allow you to build wizard-based reports without having any understanding of the underlying report languages or programming or anything else. You can build map-based reports that tie data to geographic locations. You can build complex interactive data without being IT or programmer. And that's important because there's a lot more people who understand the data than there are IT people who can build the required reports. We want to be self-service in that way. We want to take advantage of that rich visualization, whether it's looking at maps, whether it's doing what we call mashups, where we integrate it with things like Bing and Google Maps, where we can actually tie data to physical locations, do routing. There's all sorts of rich ways to display information. Don't get tied into a limited view of what data can mean. There's all sorts of new types of visualizations in there. They've even got tools now like sparklines and data bars, where you can actually take a single cell in Excel and have it be a chart into and of itself. So that I can have sales data that is showing me trend information on a line-by-line basis. There's a lot of rich interactivity here that we need to take better advantage of, that people aren't even aware of within their environments. All right. Part of our goal here is not just to look at the data, though, but it's to improve our organization. Organizational effectiveness, we call it. How do we find people and expertise within our organizational model? The fact is, I was doing some work with Bayer Pharmaceutical recently, and what they found was they have 108,000 employees. And what most people don't realize, when you say Bayer, you think of Bayer aspirin, right? That's what almost everybody thinks of. But they actually make much more money on their crop sciences division. Because you see, you might hit 1 in 1,000 on getting that latest drug, but farmers buy stuff like clockwork, year in and year out. So they have a huge crop sciences business that's separate from their pharmaceutical business. It represents a huge amount of their profits. And it's all the same science. They have people doing protein research to determine how it's going to affect plant growth. And they have people on the other side doing protein research to find out how it's going to affect medicines. And for years and years and years, they weren't talking to each other. They were finding cases where they had the exact same tests for the exact same proteins being run twice by 2 different groups, and they never even shared the results, never even knew that the other group was working on it. And this is a part of understanding organizational effectiveness. Every company, especially large companies, has a huge amount of intellectual capital that they need to try and take advantage of. And they rarely do it well. They rarely know which people are working on what, when, how to contact those people. There's a huge gap in sharing that information across the organization. So to that end, Microsoft is providing tools to help assist in that kind of collaboration. When we start talking about using SharePoint and sharing this data up, part of it is to share the data itself, but part of it is also to ensure that we have a point of collaboration, a point of communication, a place where we always go to find people and information. For Bayer, what they ended up doing is they enforced processes within the organization where everybody was required to keep their active projects, active research up to date in their profiles, so that when they did searches, they had what we called search-driven applications, where someone could search for that particular protein, and they would see every single person that has any association with it, whether it's through their research, or through their actual studies, or because of their background. And it all of a sudden opened up huge avenues of collaboration where they could take teams and share costs across the organization rather than duplicating that effort. And that's what these tools are meant to give you, is the ability to work through that, to discuss, to engage, to tie people together across the organization. How many of you guys have Facebook accounts? It's okay, don't be ashamed, there's nothing wrong with it. You can't get away from it. The fact is, social computing is an important part of our current world. You may like it, you may not, but it is here to stay. And we need to understand how that social computing fits within the organization. Part of it is understanding what your organization does, what things they're interested in, what people's specialties are. Part of it is using or crowdsourcing the process of understanding data. Think about it. If you have 100,000 employees and they all have specialties, that's why they were hired, and they're out there interacting with the data and providing, tagging, and information that identifies the importance or relevance of different kinds of information, your overall data set is going to be just so many times richer than other organizations. Because for other organizations where that's coming down from the top, it's going to be very narrowly focused. Crowdsourcing that to your organization leverages the knowledge, the intellectual capital that you've developed and built, or that your company has developed and built. So these are things that you want to be thinking about. What are the ways that we can take advantage of this technology and move it forward? And from Microsoft's perspective, they provide some of these tools in the SharePoint environment, so you have the ability to tie those things but still have it be inside the corporation. Most companies aren't real big fans of you posting stuff on Facebook, just FYI. You want to be careful with that and get yourself in trouble. But that's what we're looking at. How do we do things like blogs within the organization? How do we manage things like wiki pages? How do we build in social tagging and crowdsourcing and crowd rating of our information, our intellectual capital within the organization? That's things that you can bring as the new generation of intellectuals in your organization. Because the fact is, I can tell you right now, your bosses aren't going to know about it. They're not going to understand it. Very few people who haven't had the experience of Facebook and Twitter and social computing can envision how to use it within the organization. It takes a really tough leap to get there. But for a lot of you guys, it's part of your everyday lives. And you can take that experience and say, how do I use this information in the corporation to create something new, something better, something that will move my company forward or my career forward? All right, wrapping some of these things up. We start talking about relevant search and filtered search. Again, this goes back to my idea of search-driven applications. The fact is, it's hard to build an application for everything. We need to get to our data. But everybody understands search. If there's one thing Google has taught us, it's that search really can be the center of your world if you want it to be. And companies are starting to realize that they can do that. That they can actually make all of their data searchable. So that when the user comes in, they're not trying to navigate through 50 different applications or 50 different menus. They're going to simple searches, searching for their data, and then because it's got good relevant information, diving right to the connections that they need. So you're going to see a lot of this as you get out into the business world in the next few years, where companies are moving towards search-driven as opposed to application-driven, where they are trying to find ways to use a simple concept that everybody understands as a way of getting to whatever kind of information you need. So you'll be looking for that as you go forward. All right. So we start talking about organizational visibility, understanding your hierarchy, your structures. One of the things that's missing in most companies is the idea of a taxonomy, the ability to understand their business. And I don't mean we have a CEO and we have departments and we have groups within our departments. I mean really understanding how to describe an organization. When you go into your company, I encourage you to take a minute and see what are the different ways that you would hierarchically describe your company. Because when you come in with fresh eyes, you may see things differently than the people who've been there for too long. And you might understand how to use that information to the betterment of the business. In Bear's case, that was understanding that scientific concerns crossed corporate boundaries. That the science happening in crop sciences matched up to the science happening in pharmaceuticals. And that by knowing that and understanding that relationship, they could leverage their data better, and it led to real cost savings within the organization. So think about the ways that you can describe your organization, the ways that you can put this together to create something new and better. As a part of that, we need to look at how do we take data and how do we use it in context. This goes back to my lies, damn lies, and statistics. If you take a piece of information without the backing, without the context that makes it relevant, you really don't have anything. Nothing meaningful, at least. And you're likely to make bad decisions off of it. So you always need to think about, if I want to make a decision about my effectiveness of my marketing, then I need to fill in the context. What are the other critical data points that I need to make available in order for that information about the marketing team to have any meaning at all? As data analysts, as people going into the data world using your MBAs, that will be a significant portion of your jobs. Taking that data, finding its context, and then reporting on why that's relevant to the organization. So definitely you want to be thinking about that and thinking about what tools are available to help you convey that information. Because I guarantee you, your bosses aren't going to just take your word for it. They're going to want to see it. They're going to want to know how you came up with that and how the data fits together. And if you could provide them a dashboard that shows them that on an ongoing basis, that's pretty powerful. And those are things that we want to use these tools to achieve. Things like SharePoint, things like SQL Server, things like Excel. We can use these tools with no programming background, no developer background, minimal IT involvement, and still produce very interesting and complex solutions for our companies. And when you're looking at how you want to display that data, think about how you can convey it most effectively. The fact is, picture speaks 1,000 words, right? But make sure it's the right picture. Because it's no good if it doesn't convey the right information at the right time. Now, as you guys go out and start looking at your careers, Microsoft has laid out these technologies. I'm a big Microsoft fan. I believe Microsoft, much like Joey does. I live it, I breathe it. I find that most businesses can take good advantage of it. But I'm not here to tell you this is the only way to do things. The fact is there's a lot of solutions out there that can provide a lot of power to your organization. One of the first things that you're going to have to do is figure out what tools are available within your company so you can leverage those. Part of the reason why I find Microsoft package so compelling is because it's already in place in most organizations. It doesn't require going and spending $1 bajillion on some specialized BI tool. Because guess what? You already have Excel. Everybody already has it. You probably already have SQL Server, because most large companies already have SQL servers up and running, which means you have all those tools too. And a lot of the organizations have SharePoint now as well. You might have all the pieces you need. You just need to learn how to leverage that. Whereas most other companies and most other solutions that I've seen tend to be only filling one small niche, which means now I have to tie together 10 different technologies to get to that solution, rather than just using what's already there within the organization and leveraging it going forward. Now you heard Joey talk about the idea of don't chase the fires, right? Don't get caught up running in circles trying to just solve fires here and there. Whether you're in IT or not, that does happen all the time. And part of using a single consolidated infrastructure, whether it's localized or in the cloud, is to minimize the number of experts that you need to get the job done. If you have one set of technologies, you have one set of management issues that you can then automate or deal with. And that's going to lower your total cost of ownership within your organization. So again, we look at SharePoint and SQL Server to handle things like the data storage, the data mining, the reporting. And then we use things like SharePoint to handle our collaboration, to work with building our dashboards, for building tie-ins where we can display different kinds of data in one environment. A single hub where people can go to collect their information. All right, now, when we start talking about scalability, I'm going to move past this a little bit because Joey covered it pretty well. When we look at scalability, we look at how do we grow our environment to manage rich, complex data? Well, the first step is, am I going to buy bigger machines? Am I going to buy more machines? Am I going to have 1,000 servers sitting around in my closet for that one spike, right? Or are we going to start moving towards the cloud? The BI cloud is much like any of the other cloud components that you've heard about. The idea here is to take information and start housing, reporting on it off-site, or even if it's your private cloud, in a series of managed resources that you can scale on demand as your business grows. All right. I'm getting the signal that I'm running out of time here, so I'll have to wrap this up real quick. When we start looking at it, always look at your data from a couple of key points. First off, how do I build my data? How do I build access to my data? How do I consolidate my data? That's the data piece of it. How do I get to it? Where is it coming from? How do I share it with my people? Those are going to be your core obstacles that you have to overcome. And that's where you want to start pulling this technology together in order to achieve those goals. All right. Now, when we look at Microsoft, it is an integration tool. All of their properties, all of their initiatives are oriented towards tying information into a single system. Now, of course, they want that system to be SQL Server and to be SharePoint and to be their technologies. And they are good platforms for achieving that. So they've built in tools to help your IT do this. This means that you're going to have less obstacles if you stick within those platforms and you try and push forward in building these self-service solutions for your organization. And of course, Microsoft is one of the leading companies in integrating these technologies together, in finding ways to tie together the ability to actually implement with the scope of features that people need, the completeness of that vision, the magic quadrant they call it. The fact is, you have to have a broad enough set of technologies in order to be able to hit the vast needs of these organizations, and you have to be able to implement them in a reasonable way. And there are very few companies that can achieve that effectively, because most require that you buy a huge amount from a lot of different companies to fill all of the different needs. All right, so my last piece here, some things that I see happening in 2012 and going forward, some trends that I think you should be looking for as you enter into the workforce and start thinking about your careers. The fact is, big data will continue to grow. It's not going away. I remember when a 512K floppy disk was an awesome thing, and it had all this storage. And I remember when people said, why would you ever build a hard drive? You're never going to need so much information that you have to always store it. Just put it on the disk and it'll be fine. It wasn't that long ago. But now we talk about terabytes and petabytes and just massive, massive amounts of data. And we're not talking about what Google stores. We're talking about within small organizations you've got this kind of information now. Data is huge. It's growing. Managing the storage of it, but more importantly, understanding how to access this information so you don't get drowned by it is probably one of the dominant trends in application design, in business intelligence, in cloud computing. All of these things are driven by dealing with big data. And you guys are entering into industries that have massive amounts of data, especially if you're looking at Wall Street. When we start talking about self-reliance, again, this comes back to having it be on your shoulders as opposed to IT. IT will not be able to completely catch up with the demands of business. It's just a fact. They will continue to hire, and it means great opportunities for those who want to join the IT industry. But for those of you who don't, self-reliance is the new self-service. You are going to have to be able to produce useful information without relying on IT to do it for you. You're going to have to understand how to use the tools to do that and how to make sure that you are prepared to be productive within your organizations. Enterprise software will continue to be consumerized. This goes right back to what Joey was saying when he was talking about how many of you expect to be able to get to your data on your phone, whether you're on a plane or on a train or in an automobile, right? The idea here is data, information, software, it's all being modified to be more built towards the consumer. We expect, as users, to have access to our information, to be able to use applications on a lot of different platforms, and to have that data with us at all times. This is dramatically different than anything that came before. This consumerization of software means that software is not being built for the enterprise anymore. It's being built to make it easier for all of you to use that data and take advantage of it and leverage it. Mobile BI and social BI are going to become major forces. This one might be a little longer term picture, but you're already seeing social computing changing the way business thinks about things. And mobile computing, think about iPads, iPhones, Microsoft's mobile phones. All this technology is about mobile utilization. That is not going away. Moving data towards mobile understanding how to implement social computing on top of that data are going to be core trends going forward. BI cloud. Again, the cloud, for better or worse, whether you think of it as mainstream, as a mainframe, or as something new, the fact is being able to scale information on the fly, being able to scale resources on the fly based on your needs and scale it back down if you need to later is tremendously powerful. And your BI data falls into that same scope. All that information, how do we manage all the resources to build it? When we need to do our analysis, we might need lots of resources to do that analysis, but we might not do our analysis 24/7, 365 days a year. We might have certain times in our business life cycle where we need better access to resources than at other times. And being able to scale that is what we talk about with our BI cloud. Data analysis is going to be fundamental to the job market. All of you people who are getting your MBAs and who are coming out into the workforce, first thing I said, one of the last things I'll say. Data analysis, your ability to look at information, to distinguish good information from bad information, to find the context that that information needs, is going to be the differentiating force in you being gainfully employed and not. The fact is, almost all jobs now require the ability to consume and analyze critical business information. And that was not true 10 years ago. You could be specialized. Now, whatever specialty you are, you better also be able to analyze that data, because data drives almost all of the business decisions. Now, easy access, interactive visualization, and unified communication. My last 3 points there are all oriented towards how BI information is going to be managed going forward in corporate business. The fact is, businesses are tired of having too many different sources, too many different systems. They want one place to go. They want one set of technologies that they're using. And they want one vision of the truth for their data, where they know that the information they're seeing is the same regardless of which way they analyze it. That they're not going to be fed misinformation from their own systems. And that's what we really talk about when we talk about unified communication and unified data management. People need to have a single way of interacting with their core business data. All right, now, last shameless plug. Here with NetCom, bringing all this information to you, part of what we want you to see is that your learning experience doesn't mean go become IT. It means find the things that you need to learn about. Each and every one of you will have areas of technology that you will be exposed to and that you will need to understand and that you will need to learn about. We're here to help you with that. We're here to give you advice about that, to show you what's happening in the industry. But it's up to you to take that lifelong learning leap and make it a part of your process, a part of how you approach your jobs going forward. All right. So coming forward here, as we go forward, make sure that you think about ways to differentiate yourself, to make sure that you're on that leading edge of business technology, that you're looking for how to make new things happen within your organization, that you're looking at ways to transform your organization by better use of information, and let us help you with the learning. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I believe we're ready to move on.
Develop the passion for learning, be a lifelong learner.